so I can begin this evening's talk. Can everybody hear me okay in the back there? Can you hear me, Peter? Okay. Okay, for this evening's talk, I'm going to explain who you are, or rather what you are. So if you always wanted to know this very important question, who am I? Listen carefully. You might find out. Because somebody asked me this evening, just a few minutes before I came into here, can I give a talk on the 5 aggregates? This is how the Buddha explained what you are. Not sort of what you think you are, not what you hope you are, this is actually what you are. So, in the Dhamma of Buddhism, sort of analysing, looking through powerful meditation over and over and over with deep mindfulness to find out what is this thing we call me, you, these people sitting here. And the way the Lord Buddha looked at this, he looked very carefully and saw that it's basically, first of all, into 2 parts, the body and the mind. And of that mind part, he also split it up into 4 parts, the other of the 4 aggregates, 4 groups which comprise the mind. And the reason why it was split in these ways was because this is aspects of one thing which, when you point it out, makes a lot of sense of what we take ourselves to be, what we think we are. So the 5 aggregates actually, the teaching of the 5 aggregates start to really illuminate this human problem of what am I? The body and the mind. So often in our contemporary culture, the Western scientific culture, that we just think of just a body, just a body, just a body. Never even contemplating the existence of the mind. You know, one of the reasons why is because the scientists always start to ask, where is the mind? And because they think you can't point to the mind, they think it doesn't exist. But the way I counter such an argument, I ask people like all you here, are you content? Put your hands up if you're content. Right now, come be honest. Well, there's a lot of unhappy people in here by the looks of it. Okay, those people who put their hands up, they're content. Can you please point to where you're content? Is it in your nose? Is it in your ears? Is it in your legs? The point being here is that contentment is, you're content, but can you really locate it in your body? Can you locate it in space? There's many things like this which I call like objects in the territory of the mind. Contentment is one of them, happiness. Next time you're really happy, see if you can point to that in your body. Now what actually is happy? Is it your brain which is happy? For those people who think that the mind and the brain are the same, that's stupid, isn't it? It's not your brain is happy, you can't feel anything in your brain. Where is that happiness? Where is sadness? Where is guilt? What actually feels guilty? Is it your toes feel guilty? Is it your hand feels guilty because you punched somebody? Or is it your mouth feels guilty because you said something you really shouldn't have said? But guilt is. These are all things in the territory of the mind. So this is a little exercise if anyone asks you, I don't believe in the mind. Then you ask them, where is that belief? Can you point to that belief? And when they can't point to it, you say, that's just imaginary belief. It doesn't exist. What you're doing here is you're showing there is more to this world than what you can point to. And this is a whole world of the mind. In that world of the mind, the Buddha split it up into 4 things. Those 4 things are Vedana. This is a quality of all sensory experience which is pleasurable or painful. I'll go into each one of these in turn. This is just the introduction. Vedana, call it feeling, but I'm not talking about emotional feeling. I'm talking about the feeling of pleasure and pain, beauty and ugliness, nice food, rotten food, nice thoughts, depressed thoughts. The quality of pleasure and pain with each sensory experience. The next of these 4 mind aggregates is perception. This is what the mind does to pick out the important characteristics of an experience. And I'm going to be talking a lot about how that is completely untrustworthy. And then you've got the fourth aggregate, is like the mental formations. This includes especially thinking. All of your thoughts which come up, and especially that which is created by the thoughts. Guilt, fear, anger, desire. And lastly, consciousness itself. This screen upon which all these sensory experiences are played out. Those are the four mental aggregates: feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And together with the body, that's what you are. But let's look more deep about this we take ourselves to be. And first of all, we start with this body, because still many people think they are their body. And they're attached to their body. And if you get married, you get attached to 2 bodies. And once you have kids, you get attached to 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many you have. More attachment, more problem. When we talk about the aggregates, it means when you've just got yourself, like a monk, you've just only got 5 aggregates to be worried about. But when you've got sort of a wife, or you've got 10 aggregates, then 15, then 20, it's even worse. They keep on going up by 5s every time. So when we actually look at these things, we have to see, well, exactly this thing we take as a body, what actually is it? And so often it creates a lot of suffering and misery and confusion when we don't understand the nature of this thing we call a physical body. It's one of the reasons why, I'm letting into some secrets here, what monks like to do. Sometimes people ask me, as a monk, what do you like doing? Where do you go for some entertainment? We go and see autopsies. We're really weird monks, aren't we? And why you really do this is because there you actually see a body taken apart. You see what a body truly is. Sort of see, young girls, young men, old ladies. In Asian countries, for a monk, that's appropriate. And unfortunately that some of lay Buddhists too, if they ask permission properly, can also go and see autopsies, not for some weird thrill, but in order to understand the nature of this body of ours. And once you see a couple of autopsies, you see sort of bodies taken apart, all this idea of somebody being beautiful or someone being ugly, about gender, male and female, about race, Asian or European or Eskimo or whatever. All that sort of completely disappears when you see a body, because you open it up, maybe on the outside there are different colours or different genders. Opening up, it looks pretty much the same for everybody. And all this idea of beauty and ugliness. Now, I'm pretty sure if I actually got out, say the liver of, say like Elle Macpherson, and the liver of sort of Margaret Thatcher, or whatever else it is you've got to see. He wouldn't sort of say, oh, that's a really beautiful liver, because it's Elle Macpherson's, and this one is just really this old lady who used to be a terrible politician in England. You wouldn't be able to notice a difference of it. So all this thing about someone who's really beautiful, because it's true, isn't it? When you have the glossy magazines, you never actually see the liver of Elle Macpherson. I hope I don't get sued by Elle Macpherson's company. But all you actually see is actually the the face, isn't it? And we take that to be the body. That's why somebody pointed out a long time ago that when we actually talk about the body, this first of the canons, what do we really identify with? The person's face. That's why in your passports, what have you got the picture of in your passport? Not your liver. But isn't that you just as much as your face is you? Isn't your face just an organ? Wouldn't it be wonderful? This is my liver. I'm sure that after a while that people who are skilled in looking at livers will be able to know the difference between which liver is which. Oh, that's you. So why is it that we attach to this outer skin of the body? And it creates a lot of problems when we attach to people's bodies. Because we fall in love with them. What did you fall in love with? Do you actually fall in love with a person or with their body? A lot of people, they fall in love with a person's body. You're very, very beautiful, or very, very strong and handsome. Isn't that so? Otherwise, why is it that young, say, men marry young women marry young... Why don't they marry old people? Well, like an old person, they lived their life and they got a lot of wisdom, they got a lot of kindness, usually. So if you're really going for someone's... if you're really going for someone's character, surely, you want sort of someone who's lived in the world who's wise, rather than these young people who really don't know what they're doing in life. They're not really skilled in the way they're using their mouth and the way they speak to each other because they haven't learned yet. So, but we're not really interested in marrying a sort of a mind. We're really interested in marrying a body, aren't we? Someone looks nice and doesn't smell. You see, I'm being honest, aren't I? That's why you're laughing, because what I'm saying is not being rude, it's actually true. As I was telling a new retreat here, it's about Ajahn Chah, who was a great teacher. He's my teacher in Thailand, dead now. He's a great, great teacher, and one of his stories, and I always remember this because I was actually in the car at the time when this happened. He was sitting in the front with the driver, and there was 3 of us in the back seat. There was this monk who was quite senior, spoke excellent Thai, so he was the translator, he was an American monk. There's this little American novice and myself. And so in this car, sort of Ajahn Chah suddenly turned around to this novice monk, this young American. He said, "You're thinking about your girlfriend, aren't you?" And Ajahn Chah had read his mind. And he was so shocked. He said, "Yeah, I was." And he felt, he's going to be kicked out of the car or something, because monks aren't supposed to think about their ex-girlfriends. So Ajahn Chah said, "Look, never mind, we can help you." He said, "How can you help me?" He said, "Look, next time you write to your girlfriend in America, so ask her to send something of hers back to you, so you can be reminded of her. Then you won't feel so lonely, you won't feel so sad." And this young American monk, young novice, he said, "Is that allowable for a monk to do that? Like, say, get a locket of her hair, or like a picture, or like, a little bit of her favourite dress, or whatever. Is that allowable to have something of hers to sort of keep? I'm a monk now." And I said, "Oh yes, allowable, it's allowable." And he said, "This is what you should do." And then when the translator monk finished laughing and got himself together, he explained what Ajahn Chah asked him to do. He said, "Next time you write to your girlfriend in America, send a little bottle about this big and ask for some of her feces. And then whenever you're thinking about her, just open up the bottle and smell your loved one." That's part of her, isn't it? Isn't that what happens when you fall in love with someone? "I love everything about you, my dear." Do you really? Even when you squeeze, what are you squeezing? Now, we don't like to think like that, do we? But that's part of every human being, isn't it? But the thing is, when we look at the body, we only look at the things we like to see, not the things we don't like to see. And this is like the delusion which creates problems in our life. That's why when we only look at, especially the face, or the shape of the body, that's why people get very, very upset when they start getting fat and ugly, when things start to sag. And you know what you have to do to try and keep yourself looking beautiful? Just how much torture you have to go through. Into these gyms and all this, and eating nice, good food rather than the food you really like. Why are you doing that? Is it really to keep healthy? Is it just to keep yourself looking what you think is attractive? When we have attachment to the body, it creates so much suffering. And if we really think we are the body, if that's what we take ourselves to be, it creates huge suffering. Because we're so concerned about our appearances, what we look like. That's suffering. So it's marvellous actually to not care at all what you look like. Be like a monk. Shave all your hair off, and you don't have to worry about hairstyles. You don't have to have expensive hairdress. How much does a hairdresser cost these days? Fortune, yeah, it's much cheaper. A razor blade only costs a couple of cents, and you can reuse it many, many times. You don't have to pay out with combs and brushes and all those sorts of things. When you only have a simple pair of robes like this, you don't have to worry about fashion. As I said, this robe is not Versace. This is Buddha. Buddha brand. What he's saying here is, when you realize you're not your body, things start to get very simple as far as worrying about your appearance, how you look. Secondly, about old age. You're not so worried about getting old because you know this body is not yours. This is a nature of a body to get old. You're not afraid. When I was a young monk in Thailand, a strange thing happened to me because people used to ask me how old my mother was. I had to say, actually, I don't know, she won't tell me. It's really crazy, isn't it? When people don't say what their real age is. And then say, well, because what happens in the West, ladies, they always take about 5 or 10 years off their age. They may be sort of 50, but they say they're, just over 40. They're not really lying because 50 is over 40, but what I mean just over is just a matter of debate. But they always try to take off. But in Thailand, that people would actually add a few years onto their age. And so people were only 40, they would say, maybe just a little bit under 50. And it was really strange to hear that because people got more respect the older they were. And they looked forward to getting old. It was fun to get old. And they weren't afraid of getting old. And they always had a place in the village when they were old. When it came to the time when they were working in the fields, this is rural Thailand, when the harvest was on, every able-bodied person had to go out into the fields to work. There would be school holidays, so the kids could go out and help their parents. It was only the very young and the very old couldn't work. So these old people, when it came to sort of rice planting or harvest time, had a wonderful time. They had the little kids to look after, and little kids had the grandparents to look after, and they enjoyed each other's company immensely. They were an important part of the village economy. As the babysitters during harvest time, because no one else could be spared. And they really had a marvellous time. So no one was afraid of getting old. Unfortunately, in our society, we don't respect the old. And that's a huge problem for us. It makes us afraid of old age. And also it means that we don't accept old age in our body. You get some people who keep on having nose jobs, face jobs, this job, that job. They're really a big job. A mess of jobs. Why do they do that? Because they attach to their body. So, first of all, in the 5 khandhas, we say, we aren't our body. And when you can actually let go of the body and not worry about beauty or old age or even sickness or even death, this is just a body, that's all. We all know inside of us that one day this body, we have to let it go. We all know that death happens, but we never think it's going to happen to me or someone who's close to me. But with contemplating on this body and realizing this is just a body, it's just made up of flesh and bones and blood and stuff like that, there's nothing magical about it, there's nothing sacred about this, it's just a body, that's all. Then one can very easily let it go. And let other people's body go as well. If you look upon this body just like a car, like a vehicle, you try and make use of this vehicle, look after this vehicle, service this vehicle, give it good fuel, and it will last you a long time, but when it's time to go, and the vehicle is finished with, then you can let this vehicle go, and what happens? You get another vehicle. That's why in Buddhism we have this thing we call the insurance policy. The insurance policy, because if you've got a vehicle, you've got a good insurance policy, it means if your vehicle crashes or it gets stolen, then you get all the money back. In fact, if you've got a very good insurance policy, you get even a better vehicle back than what you started with. If you've got a very, very poor insurance policy, it means, the vehicle you've had now, the next one will be a really old bomb, or even a bicycle, or even a skateboard, who knows. In this simile, your insurance policy is called karma. So if you paid your insurance premiums by making lots and lots of good karma, it means when this body dies, the next one will be even better. If you haven't made much good karma in this life and this body dies, your insurance premiums haven't been paid up, it means your next body is going to be an old bomb. So that's the insurance policy. But this is just the body. So understanding you are not the body. That's one of the first things. People who have out-of-the-body experiences. The word out of the body means they have this mind, this consciousness, which is out of the body, looking down, seeing their body dead on the table. Every time this happens in a hospital, the person is clinically dead. And they're still around. They still know. They can still see. And there's been so many incidents of that, and maybe you have had an experience of that you know it's real, it happens. So it should show you that you aren't the body, that you can exist without the body, and that means that you can let this body go. When it's time to die, this old vehicle, this old car, leave it alone, let someone else look after it, and you can just carry on according to the stream of consciousness, the mind. And when somebody else dies, you don't have to worry, that's just the body has gone. You don't have to worry, the person has gone. The person is not the body. Surely that should be obvious. But the other four khandhas are all about the mind. And because people don't understand what this mind is very much, there's beautiful teaching about the four aspects of the mind, the four aggregates of the mind. And the first is Vedana. And this reason why it's one of the first is because this is one of the most prominent features of the mind, which causes one of the most, probably the biggest problem for human beings. Seeking for pleasure, trying to get rid of pain. Now, when you start to look at this aspect of the mind, and it's true, pleasure and pain is it not imagined? And it's a problem, isn't it? We want pleasure, we want to get rid of pain. We want as much pleasure as we possibly can. We spend an enormous amount of our individual resources and our society's resources trying to get as much pleasure as possible and trying to get rid of as much pain as possible. By pleasure and pain, I don't mean physical pleasure and physical pain. I mean with all the other senses as well. In Buddhism, 6 senses. If we're talking about sight, pleasure and pain is beauty and ugliness. Not just with human beings, but with art, with seeing flowers or seeing weeds, seeing sort of a mess, or seeing everything nice and tidy. This is like the pleasurable sights and the painful sights. Sounds, seeing beautiful music or rotten sounds of crows crowing or frogs croaking or whatever else is a rotten sound as far as you're concerned. Praise and blame, when people say nice things about you or they say rotten things about you. All these nice sounds and rotten sounds. That's the pleasure and pain with regard to sound. With smells, you all know there's the fragrant smells, and when somebody pongs, there's a nice smell, and it's not just with people, it's with things in the world. You know that there was once somebody brought here some flowers for the altar. And it's the first time I actually saw this flower, because when I came into they actually left it just in the kitchen over there. When I came in, I thought that somebody had stepped in some dog poo, because I could really smell this terrible smell. And I looked at all the shoes and couldn't find any dog poo on the shoes. I looked on the carpet and couldn't see anything on there, so I followed my nose, smelling. But my nose came to this flower. And it was one of these flowers in West Australia, which actually, they don't give a fragrant smell, they give this rotten smell of dog poo. Because I don't know if you've seen this before, it's an amazing flower because it looks so beautiful, so fragrant. But actually it smells terrible because it uses that smell to attract flies rather than bees, because that's how it's pollinated. So even the most beautiful things can smell. And that's like the pleasure and pain with smell and taste. The nice food and rotten food, which you have to take now and again. With the body, the pleasure and pain is very easy to understand. And the pleasure and the pain of the mind, the joy and the depression, the happiness and the pain inside. Those are the 6 senses and the aspect of those senses which is pleasure and pain. Now the point is, when you explain things like this, it should become pretty obvious to each one of you that you cannot get beauty without ugliness. You cannot get praise without blame. You cannot get a nice smell without a rotten smell to compare it with. You cannot get just beautiful tasting food without rotten tasting food. You cannot get pleasure in the body without pain. You cannot get happiness in the mind without suffering. These go together as a pair. Inseparable. That's why. Right. See, that's a rotten smell and a rotten sight. So the point is that no matter what you get, you have to get these two as a pair. And that's why that sometimes you start to... This is an important consequence of that. Because we try and get just happiness, just beauty, just what we like to hear. We try and find a partner who only says nice things to us. You can't have that. That's why Ajahn Chah said it's looking for the tortoise with a moustache. You'll never find it. But people promise that. They promise if you keep going to church and keep giving your donation, you go to heaven. And this is why that when I started hearing about this, I started contemplating, how can you have just happiness? It's impossible. Imagine what it would be like in heaven. According to the heaven which I was taught when I was going to Christian schools, everyone wears white. And the only music you ever hear is harp music. Actually, I don't like harp music. I like electric guitars when I was young. And everyone looks the same. And it's the only food you ever get is ambrosia. Imagine ambrosia for breakfast, dinner and lunch. Not just on Sundays. Monday to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, week in, week out, year in, century in. After a few million years, you'll be sick to the teeth of ambrosia. That's why there's this story of this fellow up in heaven. And he'd had ambrosia for so long, had harp music, all these people wearing the same old white clothes. He had this vision of hell. Instead of ambrosia, they had really nice food down there. You could have McDonald's if you want. You could have Chinese if you want. You can have whatever you want down in hell. And instead of having these white gowns, the people were really nicely dressed, in sort of fashionable clothes, and it really looked nice colours, nice shapes. And instead of like harp music, you had nice rock bands. They had big classical orchestras, whatever you want down there. So he sort of got so upset, he went up to one of the angels and said, look, this is not right. I worked very hard. I sacrificed a lot to get into heaven. And all we get is ambrosia and harp music. Surely can't we have a few rock bands up here? Can't we have some nice food? And sort of, have sort of the angels and wearing some nice clothes, liven the place up a bit. And the angel said, no, it's tradition. Heaven has always been like this. You can't change it. It's been like this hundreds of thousands of years. But he said, why don't you change it? This is supposed to be my eternal reward. But whatever he said, the angel just said, no, unfortunately it's tradition. But he said, look, if you like it so well down there, why don't you go down to hell? You can have as much rock music as you want. He said, right, okay. So he went down to hell. As soon as he got down there, these big, terrible, ugly, fearsome demons took hold of him. They put him in this big vat of boiling oil and they started poking him with these forks like you see in the pictures. He said, hey, what are you doing this for? Where's the rock music? Where's all the pretty girls in the nice clothes? And where's all this nice food? And the demons there, the devils there said, oh, that's just our advertising campaign. Which is true, isn't it? Advertising, that's what they do. They called him out. But the point is, even if you did go to heaven, sort of, can there be just pleasure without any pain? If you look in your life, why was something so painful? Because something pleasurable has been taken away from you. Why is something so pleasurable? Because a lot of pain has suddenly gone. In our society, what's happiness? So the happiest day of a person's life when you get married. Why is that? Because of all the suffering of trying to find a partner. It's true, isn't it? It's hard finding a partner in this world. And finally you got one, alas, that's finished. What about some of the other happiest days of your life? Like Friday. Why is Friday a happy day? Because all the work. You know, it's painful going to work. That's why I just finished a retreat last week. I was teaching a 9-day retreat in North Perth. And always, at the end of the retreat, everyone's smiling. Because of all the pain they went through for the previous 9 days. But someone said they were very sad when the retreat ended. Why was that? Because of all the happiness they had had. And now it was ending. So this is what happiness and pain really are. Whenever I get sick, I never feel as healthy in my life as just after I've got sick. And I've got better again. You see the need to know sickness to appreciate health? The need for pleasure to know pain, the need for pain to know pleasure. Once you understand how these two things work together, they are inseparable. There is no pain without pleasure. There is no pleasure without pain. There is no beauty without ugliness. There is no ugliness without beauty. There is no delicious food without terrible tasting food to make you appreciate it. Once you really see deeply into this, you realize that this is just Vedana, and the feeling. And we're deluding to think we can control this, that we can escape from pain and sickness and disappointment and only have pleasure and happiness. Ha ha ha. Hands up, anyone here who's never been sick. Hands here, anyone who's never been disappointed. Hands up here, anyone who's never seen ugliness. Hands up, anyone who's never been blamed and criticized. Okay. Case proven. That part of the world which is painful, that part of the world is pleasurable. They move together. And the reason why the Buddha pointed this out as one of the aggregates is because through misunderstanding this, we expect that somehow, somewhere in this world we'll just have pleasure, 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 beauty, 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 nice sound, nice sound, nice sound, nice thoughts, nice thoughts, nice thoughts, thinking that the other half we can get rid of. No way. When we realize we can't control pleasure and pain, then that's what we call the end of craving. We let go and realize that pain we have a fair amount of pain, we have a fair amount of pleasure as well. Par for the course. So whenever you're in pain, you realize it's not going to last, it will end. Whenever you have pleasure, you know it's not going to last, it's not going to end. Whenever you have disappointment, you know it's going to end. And you're going to have happiness again. But when you have happiness, that's going to end too. Isn't that true? This is not a theory. Isn't that according to your experience so far in life? Isn't that according to everyone else's experience? So be honest to your experience. The third of these aggregates of the mind, this is a pleasure and pain thing which I just finished with, is also a great source of delusion. It's called perception. Perception is when we look at what we're experiencing and only see what we want to see. We see only what's important to us. If we're in a bad mood, we see only the bad things which tend to encourage our depression. That's why it's so hard, like when people come up and they're depressed, they've got problems, to try and sort of get them out of that. Because everything they say, everything they think, is looking to support sort of their depression. If they're angry, they're looking to support their anger. They're looking for more evidence to justify their moods. This is what perception does. It bends the truth, it selects what you want to hear, what you want to see. Have you ever had arguments in the house about who said what? You said that. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. Why does that happen? Is it that someone is crazy? The reason is because whenever something is said, one person only hears half of it, and the other one only hears half of what they say. You don't see the full story. This is why perception, it picks out aspects. I mentioned earlier, a few weeks ago, which is a very beautiful experiment which was done recently. The experiment with the doors. Remember that experiment on a campus in the US somewhere? This experimenter went up to a student and said, "Where's the way to this lecture theatre?" And just after they asked the question, these two workmen went right between the two of them with a big door. So for maybe 5 seconds they couldn't see each other. And once the door went past, and then the questioner continued the question. I said, where is the lecture theatre? And the little student said, it's over there somewhere. Only what had happened, as the door was passing between them, the original questioner went along with the door, and the new questioner was there. And sometimes they changed even the gender. The first person was a man, then it was a woman. Big person, small person. Afro-American, then a Caucasian. And the student being asked a question didn't notice. They didn't notice that the questioner had changed. Why? Because their perception only was looking at the question, not the person asking the question. That was actually proven to be true. What we're looking for is what we see. That's why if you've got an enemy in the world, then whenever you meet them, the reason why they remain your enemy is because you're looking for all their faults to justify your anger. Whereas if you love someone very dearly, doesn't matter what they do, you're looking for things to justify your love. That's why when you first fall in love with someone, you love everything about them. Even the way they pick their nose. It's so cute. But when the anger comes in a marriage, in a relationship, when the person says, "Look, darling, I'm sorry about that, I really love you. What do you mean by that? What are you trying to get out of this?" You don't trust. So you're always looking for things to justify your anger. This is perception. You can't trust perception. It always gets you into trouble. Like, for example, this couple, they'd been married 25 years. And they were going on their second honeymoon. Where they first went to the honeymoon on this beach resort somewhere. And as they were walking along, enjoying their memories of 25 years ago when they first got married, they found this little bottle on the beach. It was an old bottle. The fellow uncorked it, and sure enough, a genie came out. And the genie said, "Oh, thank you, I've been in this bottle for 25 years. And the couple said, "That's amazing, because we've been married for 25 years. The genie said, "Well, I'll give you a wish. And seeing as there's two of you, I'll give you a wish each. What's your wish?" And the wife said, "Look, we've been working hard all our life. We've raised our kids. It would be wonderful if we had enough money just to retire." And straight away the genie magicked a banknote, a draft for £1 million, and gave it to the lady. "There you are, enough money there to retire. You don't need to go to work again." She was so happy. And he asked the man, he said, "What's your wish?" And he looked at his wife. She was 50 years of age. He said, "I wish I was married to a girl 30 years younger than me." And the genie smiled, and he changed into an 80-year-old. It's true. He had a no, he had a wife 30 years younger than him. So this is perception, how it can get you wrong, get you into... Genie just perceived it wrong. He didn't really realise what the man had asked. So, perception. You base a lot of your experience on what you perceive. I felt this, I heard this, and you think you know it. They have in Buddhism a very old story about perception of the 7 blind men and the elephant. Many of you know that story. 7 blind men. One of them felt the tusk, one of them felt the trunk, one of them felt the ears, the body, the legs, the tail. And they asked the blind man, what is an elephant? One who felt the tusk said it was a plough, the trunk said it was a snake, the one who felt the body said it was like a big rock, one who felt the legs said it was a tree trunk, one who felt the back said it was a fly whisk, the tail. That's what they perceived. You know what happened next? It's a fascinating story because they all thought that what they felt, what they perceived was the truth. That's what an elephant was. And so they had an argument. No, an elephant's not like this. An elephant's like this. I can feel it. I know it. And they had this big argument and fight. It just shows just how our arguments in the world originate. We perceive and we believe that what we perceive is the full story. This is where all the religions in the world come from. Perceiving different parts of the elephant. All of the politics, the different parties, the different ideologies. This is where all the arguments in your home start from. Different perceptions. Wouldn't it be wonderful? This is actually not in the Buddha story. Wouldn't it be wonderful if those blind men actually met together and they say, well, what an elephant is like, it's got a big snake in the front with 2 ploughs on either side. There's a big rock with these 2 fans on, that's what the ears were supposed to be, fans on the edge. And that's on a bigger rock on 4 tree trunks with a fly whisk at the back. That would actually be a pretty good description of an elephant. If people would only get their perceptions together, join together, and instead of fight about who's got the best perception, join them all together. Wouldn't that be a wonderful world? We get far closer to the truth that way. So next time you have an argument at home, don't fight over the different views. Join those views together, combine them, and then you get much closer to the truth, and also much closer to harmony. But the way the mind works is we keep picking out just a fraction of reality. What we want to see, what we want to hear, what we want to feel. When we realize that the perception is unreliable, all arguments stop. The next of the khandhas, or the aggregates, is what's called mental formation, starting with thought. We really think that we are. This Waven, was it Descartes? I think, therefore I am. What a fool. If you stop thinking, who are you then? And in meditation you can actually stop thinking. No thoughts whatsoever. And that's silence. It would be wonderful if Descartes could learn meditation. He could actually refute the whole of that philosophy. I think, therefore I am. What happens if you stop thinking? Who are you then? But there is some truth in that because we make ourselves up of our thoughts. Who do you think you are? This is actually our identity, isn't it? Our ego. I think I'm a monk. I think I'm a woman. I think I'm so old, so young. I think I'm good at this. I think I'm good at that. Be careful of all that thinking, because all that thinking goes one way today, it goes another way tomorrow. And all that thinking again is based on your perceptions. Does it really ever get you anywhere? All these thoughts. It doesn't get you to truth, because all thinking leads to a contrary end. It never gets to the heart of the matter. If you really want to know, then be quiet and feel. And when you actually look at the stars at night, the universe up in the sky, do you really need to think what those stars are? Because I trained in physics, I knew about those stars, and that was one of my pet subjects, astrophysics. I used to go to all these lectures on astrophysics and get to know all the names of those stars and how far away, how many light years they were, what type of star they were. And when I knew all of those labels, I could never see the beauty in the heavens at night. All I could see is those labels and my knowledge. I couldn't see the beauty. And so it took me many years to forget all of those labels and names and all of those ideas, so I could actually see the stars as a child sees those stars. All the thinking was stopping me seeing beauty, stopping me being at peace with things. That's why human beings in our age are such compulsive thinkers that probably is the biggest disease we have, which stops us being happy. We just think too much. What happens when something goes wrong? We think. When we get disappointed, think. When someone calls us an idiot, you've heard this one before, someone calls you an idiot. They shouldn't call me an idiot. Why do they call me an idiot? And if everyone is an idiot, they are an idiot, not me. And every time you think of that, you've called yourself an idiot another time. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they just called you an idiot and you just forgot about it? Then you'd only be an idiot once. But every time you think about it, you're another idiot. It's true. So the thinking is idiotic sometimes. It's okay to think now and again, but we think far too much. It's part of the Buddhist training in meditation to curtail this wild thinking, which, because it hasn't been trained, is like a wild elephant who just crashes through so much happiness and so much possible contentment and destroys so much peace in our lives. If we could stop thinking but listen more. What happens when someone who's close to you speaks to you and wants to tell you something? Do you really listen, honestly? Or do you think, here they go again, can't they shut up? Don't they know I'm busy? I don't want to hear this. Think. So you're not listening to what the person is telling you. You're just listening to your own thoughts. This is why there's no communication these days. This was actually in the Time magazine. I'm not quite sure if this is happening here today. They did a survey about what people actually do when they're listening to a talk. In this survey they found that 95% of people while listening to a lecture were thinking sexual fantasies. I hope you're not doing that this evening. They're not listening, they're thinking. And when we think these things, think, we find we get worried, we get anxious, we get angry, we get guilty. All these emotions, where do they come from? Thinking too much. You know that. That's why the Buddha pointed this out. Thinking, this aggregate of thinking, needs to be looked at very, very carefully and even let go of. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able at any time to find this little switch in your mind to turn off all the thinking and be quiet? Wouldn't it be wonderful to do? This is what meditation is all about, to stop the thinking and be absolutely silent. When you're silent, you realize just how you've thought far too much. And just how wonderful it is to be still. How wonderful it is just to be with someone without talking, without thinking. But just knowing in the silence. And every thought which I've had always is not quite true. All the philosophies which you have are never quite true. This is why there's those two types of speech, outer speech, inner speech. And the best speech of all is silence. That's why the old Buddhist saying, the great rivers are the ones which flow silently. The insignificant, trifling streams are the ones which make all the noise. Great minds are not thinkers. Great minds are silent. all the wisdom of Buddhism, all the wisdom of the world, does not come through thinking problems out, but through being silent and seeing clearly. But that's an aspect of the mind, thinking. When we identify with that, we can't let it go. And actually this is a problem when people meditate. Why they can't get silent, why they can't stop thinking. You know why? Because you're afraid. Afraid of silence. So much identified with thinking. It's your security blanket. When you're not thinking, you wonder where you've gone. It's marvellous to be silent. So that's part of that other mental aspect. And that thinking is the great creator. Sometimes we wonder, like, who created the world? Thought created the world. Not God, thought. Happiness and pain, you thought it. Your house, your career, philosophy of life, who created that? Thought did. Think about that. The last of the khandhas is called consciousness. And consciousness is one of the deepest aspects of these aggregates. This is the last part of the mind. In this description of the aggregates, you can look upon consciousness as like the screen. And all these other things, including the body, the feelings, perceptions, and the thoughts, and other mental activities based on those thoughts, such as guilt or happiness or whatever, those are the objects on the screen. That's the program on the screen. Consciousness is the television screen, and this is what's appearing on it. The thing with consciousness, though, is because the only time we're here, as it were, the only time we know is when there's something on the screen. Now we take this consciousness to be me, and I am that which knows. I am the one hearing. I am the one feeling the pain in the body. I am the one thinking the thoughts. And this is where the Buddha was very good when it gets to this fundamental part of the mind. He said, really, are you? And when he started looking at consciousness in depth, you can see there are actually 6 different types of consciousness. The 6 different senses. Seeing consciousness is very different than hearing, which is very different than smelling, which is very different than tasting, which is very different than feeling, which is very different than mind consciousness. But what happens if you look very carefully in meditation, whatever you see with your eyes, then the mind knows. Sight consciousness is followed immediately afterwards by mind consciousness. Whatever you hear, the mind knows. Hearing consciousness, and then mind consciousness. The same with the other body senses, whether it's smell or taste in the body, whatever you feel, the mind knows. That's why with each of these 5 senses, mind consciousness follows directly afterwards. The job of meditation in Buddhism to get you enlightened is to calm down those 6 senses so far they completely disappear, so you just have mind consciousness with no sight, sound, smell, taste, and no physical touch. All body disappeared, you can't hear anything. In deep meditation, someone can shout at you, you will not be disturbed because you're way deeper than those 5 senses. In that deep meditation, when, as it were, the body has stopped, there's no sight, sound, smell, taste, or physical feelings. Those are called jhanas. You are still aware. What are you aware of? You're aware of mind consciousness. Mind consciousness is purified, is alone. And you get to know what mind consciousness is. In the same way, if you want to know what gold is, you have to purify it of all of the other impurities. Get rid of those other things in there, so you've just got gold and no other elements. Then you know what gold is. If you really want to know what mind is, you have to get into those deep meditations and you're face to face with mind. What you know afterwards is what mind consciousness is. And then you'll see afterwards that that which you took to be a continuous flow of conscious experience was just sound and mind. Sound mind, sound mind, sound mind. Sight mind, feeling mind, smell mind. Always mind consciousness, as it were, holding the hand of these 5 other consciousnesses, giving the illusion of continuity of consciousness. When you see the nature of mind consciousness, this idea of a flow of consciousness completely disappears. It's what I call Ajahn Brahm's fruit salad simile. It's like, now there's an orange, and then there's a coconut. That the orange completely disappears as left with a coconut. And then a coconut disappears, and then there's an orange again, then a coconut. Then an apple and a coconut, an apple and a coconut. And then the coconut disappears, and then there's a banana. The banana disappears, and then another coconut again. This coconut is always following. But this fruit salad means that once the orange disappears, it's completely gone, and now it's a coconut. And the coconut disappears as well. These different types of consciousnesses arise and disappear in the mind, one after the other, very fast. Once you see oranges coming and going, completely disappearing, you know that the oranges aren't permanent, aren't essential. They're not you, they're not me. Once you see the bananas disappearing, now there's a banana, now it's gone. It means it's not essential, it's impermanent, it's not you. Once you see the coconut, the mind, coming and going, you know that which knows consciousness is impermanent, it's not essential, it is not you. Consciousness is not permanent. That which knows is just a process in the world. It's like people sometimes in Buddhism contemplate impermanence. They see all these things, all these experiences come and go. Just like seeing the programs of a television come and go. But when, in your meditation, you see mind consciousness disappear, it's like seeing the television in your home completely vanish in front of your eyes. Once there's a television, and now it's completely gone, just emptiness, just space. Then you know that consciousness too is not me, not mine, not a self. Impermanent, insubstantial. This is where the teaching of the 5 aggregates reaches its purpose, its goal. To show you that that which you take to be you, which you think you are, very beautifully described as the body, the feelings, the perceptions, mental formations, thoughts, and consciousness itself, when you analyze it, you take it apart, you look at it very deeply, you find there's nothing substantial there. Like froth on the Ganges, the Buddha said, for the body. That feeling just like a raindrop in a puddle. Pleasure, pain, just a plop and then it's gone. This is even Robert Burns. Pleasures are like poppies spread. You pluck the flower, the bloom is shed. Or like the snowfall in the river. White for a moment and then gone forever. That's Vedana feeling. And perception is like a mirage. You see what you want to see. It's not what's really there. Like the blind men and the elephants. The mental formations like thoughts. It's like an onion. No real heart to it. You can keep peeling it and peeling it, but there's nothing solid there. And the consciousness, they call like a magician's trick. The trick of thinking that you are the one who knows. These are the descriptions of the 5 aggregates. What you think you are. Because you think you are these things, that you're very afraid of becoming unconscious when you die, very afraid of not thinking, very afraid of not perceiving, not feeling, not having a body. When we're attached to things, then we have fear. All fear comes from letting go of something we think is very important and essential. When you realize these things aren't important, aren't essential, we can let them go easily. When we don't own anything, then we're free. The more you own your body, do you really own your body? Is that you? Do you really own your feelings, pleasure and pain? Can you control them? Do you really own your perceptions? Are they true? Do you really own your thoughts? Do they get you anywhere? Do you really own your consciousness? Is that what you are? Teaching the 5 aggregates is to stop attachments, to see the truth, to be enlightened, and thereby to be free. So may you all be free from following the teachings of the 5 aggregates. And may these 5 aggregates which you have now be the last 5 aggregates. May you not take on another 5 aggregates in your next lifetime. Otherwise you might have to come back to the Buddhist Society and listen to more talks like this many, many more times. So that's the talk for this evening, the 5 aggregates. Any questions?